You think legionary, sword, reward, but Rome's main cash flow came not from the sword, but from cunning. Who made a fortune? One guy hauled stench. He collected urine from the streets, paid a tax to Vespasian, and sold it to tanners. Another bought a cheap slave, trained him, and resold him as a specialist, a margin higher than on an iPhone today. Every holiday was a casino. Betting on chariot races circulated more money than a small province. Interest on loans reached up to 48% per year. And for a debt, they could sell your body or your son. Want to know what the economy was built on? Rotten fish, the blood of arenas, and loans? Don't switch the channel. We're about to break down the Roman wallet. Let's start with the fact that the Romans were not just warriors. They were businessmen in togas. Imagine, you wake up in your insula, a multi-story apartment building where you pay rent to a landlord who might own another 10 such buildings across the city. Even then, there were true rentiers who lived off passive income from real estate. Some senators owned entire blocks in Rome, and their annual rental income could reach millions of sesterces. It's as if a person today earned several $1,000,000 just by renting out apartments. And now for the dirtiest but most profitable business in ancient Rome: waste disposal. Remember Emperor Vespasian with his famous phrase, "Money does not stink"? He introduced a tax on public toilets, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. There was a whole industry for collecting urine. Special workers fullers walked around the city with carts and collected the contents of street pots. Urine was used in tanning, to treat hides, and in laundries as a bleach due to its ammonia content. Imagine, a person literally collects urine, pays a tax for it, and still makes a profit. There you have it, a stinky business with high profitability. Speaking of laundries, this was another profitable business in Rome. Fullones, as the laundry owners were called, not only washed clothes but also bleached new togas, which were originally gray. For bleaching, they used urine. Yes, it again, soda, and a special clay. Laundry workers stood in large vats and trampled the clothes with their feet, mixing them with these cleaning agents. Not the most pleasant job, but the owners of such laundries could earn a good living, especially if their establishment was in a wealthy area where patricians lived, who constantly needed clean, snow-white togas for public appearances. Let's move on to a more noble business, the slave trade. In Rome, this was one of the most profitable sectors of the economy. But smart traders didn't just resell slaves, they created added value. They would buy an untrained slave cheaply, teach him a craft or an art, and sell him for 10 times the price. A slave cook could cost 5 times more than an ordinary slave. A slave doctor, 20 times more. And a beautiful, educated female slave who could play musical instruments and hold a conversation could be worth a fortune. Some enterprising Romans created real schools for slaves, where they were taught various professions specifically for subsequent resale. Why not an ancient business incubator? And what about the financial sector? Oh, the Romans were true loan sharks long before Wall Street. Usury flourished, despite periodic attempts by the state to regulate interest rates. At different times, the legal maximum ranged from 8 to 12% per year, but in practice, rates could reach 48% or higher. This was especially true for maritime loans credits to finance trading expeditions. Such loans were extremely risky. The ship could sink or be captured by pirates, but the potential profit was enormous. Interestingly, Rome also had prototypes of modern banks. Argentarii, as Roman bankers were called, accepted deposits, issued loans, made money transfers between cities, and even conducted auctions. They had their offices in the Forum, where they sat at special tables. In Latin, mensa, which, by the way, is where the Italian word bank comes from. Some Argentarii became incredibly wealthy and influential, financing political campaigns and even wars. Remember Crassus, one of the richest men in Rome, who made his fortune not only on real estate, but also on financial operations. Now let's talk about something the Romans loved no less than money food. The gastronomic business in Rome was incredibly developed, from street eateries, thermopolia, where commoners could grab a hot soup, to elite suppliers of delicacies for patrician feasts. It was considered particularly chic to serve exotic products from distant provinces: oysters from Britain, flamingos from Egypt, peacocks from India. The farther and more unusual, the more expensive and prestigious. And do you know what one of the most expensive products in Rome was? Garum A fish sauce, made from the fermented entrails of fish. Essentially, it was fish that was deliberately left to rot in salt under the sun for several months. It sounds disgusting, but the Romans were crazy about it and added it to almost every dish. The best varieties of garum cost a fortune, and the production and trade of this sauce brought in huge profits. In Pompeii, archaeologists found an entire garum factory belonging to a certain Ambricius Scaurus, who, judging by his house, was one of the wealthiest men in the city. Speaking of Pompeii, other evidence of the diversity of Roman business was found there. For example, bakeries with stone mills for grinding flour and large ovens for baking bread. Baking was an important industry, especially after the state began distributing free bread to the plebs. These distributions were funded from the treasury, and the bread was baked in private bakeries on state orders, the ancient Roman equivalent of government contracts, on which one could also make a good profit. And what about entertainment? Oh, that was a real industry. Gladiator fights, chariot races, theatrical performances, all of this required huge investments, but also brought colossal profits. The owners of gladiatorial schools invested in training and maintaining fighters, and then rented them out to the organizers of the games. A successful gladiator was a valuable asset that could bring his owner a fortune. And the betting on gladiator fights, and especially on chariot races, it was a real totalizator, where sums comparable to the annual budget of a small province were circulated. Speaking of betting, one cannot fail to mention the fans of chariot racing. They were divided into factions by team colors: greens, blues, reds, and whites. Passions ran as high as in modern football matches. Wealthy fans could bet sums on their favorite team equal to the cost of several houses. And successful charioteers became real stars, received huge fees, and had crowds of fans. Gaius Apuleius Diocles, for example, won over 1,400 races in his career and earned an amount equivalent to about 15 million modern dollars. Not bad for a man whose job was to race horses around a track. But the most reliable source of wealth in Rome was always land. Owning latifundia, large agricultural estates, was the foundation of the Roman aristocracy's wealth. These estates produced grain, olive oil, wine, wool, and other agricultural products, which were then sold in the markets of Rome and other cities. Viticulture and wine production were particularly profitable. Some varieties of Roman wines, especially from Campania, were valued so highly that they were exported even to remote provinces and beyond the empire's borders. Interestingly, many Roman aristocrats, despite a formal ban on senators engaging in trade, actively participated in commercial activities through frontmen or freedmen. They invested in trading expeditions, owned shares in merchant ships, and financed the development of mines in the provinces. All of this technically did not violate the ban, but allowed them to profit from commerce. And what about the common people? How did the plebeians, who had neither land nor capital, earn a living? In the cities, there were many craft professions: blacksmiths, potters, glassblowers, jewelers, shoemakers, carpenters. Many of them united in collegia prototypes of medieval guilds, which protected the interests of their members and set quality standards. A successful artisan could eventually expand his business, hire workers or buy slaves, and turn a small workshop into a real factory. For example, in Arezzo, Italy, archaeologists discovered the remains of ceramic workshops belonging to a certain Marcus Perennius Tigranus. Judging by the scale of his production and the distribution of his products throughout the empire, this man was a true ceramics magnate of his time. His stamp is found on pottery from Britain to Syria, and he probably started as a simple potter with a single potter's wheel. The construction business deserves a special mention. Rome was constantly being built and rebuilt, especially after numerous fires. Large contractors received state orders for the construction of temples, basilicas, aqueducts, and roads. These were projects worth millions of sesterces, and considering that the Romans invented concrete and developed advanced construction technologies for their time, this business was not only profitable, but also innovative. Speaking of technology, Rome also had prototypes of patents. If you invented a new production method or improved an existing one, you could get a monopoly on its use from the state. For example, Emperor Tiberius once executed an inventor who claimed to have created unbreakable glass. Why? Because he was afraid that this invention would devalue gold and silver. The story is, of course, semi-legendary, but it shows that the Romans understood the value of technological innovations and their impact on the economy. In summary, it can be said that the economy of ancient Rome was surprisingly diverse and complex. From collecting urine to international trade, from street eateries to banking operations, the Romans found ways to make money on almost everything. And although many aspects of their economic activity seem strange or even repulsive to us, one cannot help but admire their enterprise and business acumen. They created an economic system that not only provided millions of people with everything they needed, but also allowed for the accumulation of wealth comparable to the fortunes of modern billionaires. And all this without computers, electricity, and modern means of communication. Just imagine managing a business empire when the fastest way to transmit information is a rider on a horse. Impressive, isn't it? So what do you think about the enterprise of the ancient Romans? Which of the described ways of earning money seem the most surprising or unusual to you? And is there anything we could learn from their business experience today? Write in the comments. I'm really interested to know your opinion. And if you enjoyed this dive into the economy of ancient Rome, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss new episodes. Next time, we will travel to an era where money and power were intertwined in an even more bizarre way, and the methods of earning were no less inventive. It will be a real journey into the world of ancient financial schemes and economic tricks. And for now, remember, enterprise and business acumen have been valued at all times, even when it came to trading urine.